Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Crypto News Podcast. We are buzzing as always, still coming in hot from Toronto. And I'm super pumped to have today's guest on the show, Tomer Pascal, the CEO and co-founder of OwnPlay, a Web3 mobile gaming ecosystem that has developed CityVerse Tycoon, a PWA game allowing players to trade, buy, and sell tokenized replicas of real-world buildings in New York City. Think of this as Mobile Go meeting Zillow, with all the best parts of mobile gaming, the Web3 ecosystem, and all that fun stuff, which we will, of course, get into. Tomer has an extensive multi-disciplinary experience in delivering products to their appropriate markets, working with early-stage companies, businesses with new products, and well-established organizations. Before founding OwnPlay, Tomer held several positions, including CRO at Mohawk Group, a publicly traded company. He was CEO at OMG Studios, where he served as corporate strategist and worked on digital media and customer engagement, and was also GM of Perion, which is a mobile advertising platform. He maybe not got tired of Web 2, but him and his squad jumped over to Web 3. They've been hauling ass for 2 years, working in stealth, building a mobile game, and it is finally locked and loaded and ready for the masses. Tomer, pumped to have you on the show, my friend. How you doing this morning?
Doing well, thank you. Stoked to be here. Thank you so much.
Pumped to have you on. Now, full disclosure for the listeners at home, I had the opportunity and pleasure to work with Tomer and the team 2 years ago, just as a bit of a sort of advisory consulting role when Tomer and the team jumped over from Web 2 to the Web 3 world. I learned an absolute shit ton from Tomer and the team, specifically in a couple different areas in regards to mobile gaming. And one of the biggest takeaways is, folks, you guys, myself included, none of us have even the slightest clue of how much work, time, effort, resources, money, everything it takes to actually launch a game that succeeds. Tomer and his team have worked on some of the biggest games ever created, and have, created the hooks, the platforms, the UI, the UX, the in-game economies. And this is going to be a treat of an episode. So let's jump right in here. To give our listeners a little bit, just let them learn a little bit more about you. Walk us through your past. You worked for some incredible companies, and then we'll get into some of the present day fun stuff here.
Yeah, sure. Let's start actually before the big companies. My journey started, 18 years ago. My first startup company, which was, the idea behind it was back then creating a fantasy sports platform game with a twist. And the twist was that if you wanted to have a certain player in your squad, let's say LeBron James, you actually needed to acquire at least one stock of this player with real money. And these stocks, they were tradable, right? So you could make money as the user by trading your LeBron James stocks with other participants that wanted to have LeBron in their squad, because there was a finite number of LeBrons in the system. It was amazing, right? It was an idea that was so premature in this sense. We're talking about 2006, so no mobile gaming at all. Obviously, no blockchain, nothing like that. It was a magnificent failure of being way too early to the market. And in reality, the customer acquisition costs were just non-permissive. They were crazy high. We were competing with the Yahoos of the world and these other platforms. But I stayed in love with the idea because the reaction of the customers that we did acquire and did have in the platform to the idea was great. Financially, it didn't add up from our point of view. But they love the idea of ownership and trading and having skin in the game.
You were 20 years too early. This kind of stuff's popping off right now.
Exactly. Yep. We were very, very early. By 2009, I moved on and I joined a company called Incredible back then. Later on, it changed its name to Perion. I joined as the VP of marketing, and this company was all over the place. We had consumer apps on desktop, talking about email clients, toolbars, tons of stuff like that. And also we had an entire, call it ad network, ad tech side of the business. That's where I met my current co-founder, Boaz. He was the VP of product, and the two of us worked together for 2 years over there. till he ditched me, I keep calling this, to join a company called Playtika. Back then, I think he was really in one of their early employees. He joined as their first VP of product. And he stayed there and became a GM there and literally stayed there for more than 10 years and left slightly after their IPO in 2021. As for myself, I stayed at Perion. I became a GM at Perion as well. I stayed there for 6 years, went through everything that one can think of acquiring companies, failing in acquiring companies or acquiring the right ones, managing large groups of people from R&D, marketing, product, you name it, all of the shenanigans of a public company. And then I had enough. And my entrepreneurship kind of like side was itching again. And I left Perion to found an additional ad tech company called OMG Studios, later on turned to be Front Page. We were there running content arbitrage with ad tech behind it at large scale. Slightly more than a year later, I just left. The company is still running, but from my point of view, it just wasn't what I had the real passion of doing too. And that's when I joined a company called Mohawk back then. Today, they are called Perion. I joined post-round A as their CRO. This company was actually in the e-commerce field, Amazon e-commerce, crazy experience of running this business. This is a business that has an attachment to real world products, logistics, all of these kind of like things that we needed to learn, that I needed to learn. Helped grow up the business to $100 of million in sales, IPO'd, and once my investing was done by early 2022, I left the company, reached out to Boaz that I mentioned early on and told him, dude, let's build something together. And for me, seeing kind of like what's going on Web3 gaming, especially things like Sorare, which are a fantasy sports game where players are NFTs, kind of like made me feel of kind of like finally the market is there.
It's time.
And there is now is the time. Boaz and I got convinced that yes, kind of like creating a mobile Web3 game presents a big opportunity, mainly when we compare it to what we see as Web2 guys, that mobile Web2 games are in what we call the red ocean, where it became a pay-to-play type of pay-to-win, let's call it like that, type of industry of it's heavily leaning on paid customer acquisition. Dealing with the App Store discovery is kind of like crazy hard. But when you think about the Web3 elements, that's kind of like where we got excited of, okay, finally we can leverage gameplay to provide the players themselves an option, right, for a potential financial upside from the gameplay itself, right, from hustling with the game assets and so on and so on. And we believe that if done correctly, it can be adding a lot of excitement to the gameplay and continue the narrative of Web3 and be friendly to degens. Let's call it like that. So that's kind of like us in a nutshell.
Setting the stage. I love that. Obviously, you guys raised the money. Again, this was 2-3 years ago, and you've been building in stealth for the last 2 years. There were definitely people in your camps who were like, Tomer, launch a beta, launch a coin, launch NFTs, start making money right away. You and the team said, screw that. We're going to build, or biddle, as the Web3 folks call it. We're going to biddle, we're going to biddle, we're going to biddle. We're not going to launch shit in a bear market. We're not going to launch a shitty coin with no utility. We're not going to launch shitty NFTs with no utility. We're going to wait till the game is finished. How hard was that decision in hindsight? Or was it the exact opposite? Was it super easy? Because building for 2 years, I've never built something for 2 years personally without not launching. It's got to be tough. Like any good stories to tell or sentiment that, that was in your head back at the time?
Kind of like maybe making the decision was easy, but it doesn't matter, right? It's kind of like going through this journey, which still didn't end, right? So is extra hard. Building in the garage is hard. It has it kind of like there's a trade-off there of not touching the market and not getting the sentiment of the market. which is something that I would recommend people to avoid of having. Kind of like, so in other words, if you can get the sentiment of the market, please go and get it.
Go get it. Get that product market fit, get the feedback.
The thing with games, though, is that it's tricky to put a half-baked game out there because it's unclear whether the sentiment that you're going to get is a false positive or a false negative in this sense. I keep saying a game is a fun thing, first and foremost.
Yeah,
it's not
fun above all else.
It's a fun thing. It's not a SaaS product that solves an issue that people can be forgiving to, oh, it has a shitty customer experience or whatever, but it solves whatever I need to be solved. It's a podcast recording app, and I need it. So even if they have somehow a shitty customer experience, they do solve for me, and pricing-wise they're good, I'll be forgiving. A game is not so cerebral in this sense. It's a sum of so many mini experiences that kind of like make it fun and make you as a player to convert to paid actions by the game, whatever they are. So if you have a half-baked game, you might be getting the market sentiment, but you probably are going to get maybe the wrong one, kind of like a false positive or a false negative in this case. So it was very challenging. But from our point of view, we needed to know as a team the following. Do we have a good game loop that we can build on top? From our point, that was more important than just kind of like, launching an NFT or running out for a coin that has no purpose at all. And in an hindsight, I'm glad that we've done it, because that kind of like that helped us realize that we probably have an even bigger opportunity than we thought. When we started slightly more than 2 years ago, we were locked in the fact that kind of like we need to do a mobile game. And we thought that maybe there is a way kind of like, despite it kind of like we all are experts in what we call the policies around mobile gaming, we still had a kind of like some thoughts of, okay, maybe we can bypass it. Maybe we can circumvent the hard policies of the app stores. And early on, we realized that, pardon my French, no fucking way. Kind of like that not going to happen.
It ain't happening.
Although we knew this before, right? And because, again, many of our team are high, kind of like they have more than 10 years of experience in launching mobile apps. So how do we reconcile to the fact that we want to build a game that has crypto built into it? And I'll touch upon the game itself in a second. But knowing that these two duopolies, Apple and Google, are totally not friendly to Web3 in the App Store.
Tomer, could you just sort of stretch this point out for the listeners about how many rules and regulations they've put up to anyone launching something crypto related? And can you also tie in, if you don't mind, the 30% that they take? Just sort of explain how that works to the listeners.
Yeah, I'll touch upon it because people take it for granted. And some might read my rant here as kind of like as a rant against Apple and Google. So they are right. It is a rant about them.
Yes.
I would be calling them off. They are a duopoly in this sense. Now, I don't want to get into the legalities of it. Bigger entities than myself are fighting them off on that. But they kind of like, one, Apple is as powerful or more powerful than most nations in the world. So just like any other nation, they have a codex of rules of what you can do and can't do when you utilize their platform or platforms. In this case, let's call it the App Store. One cannot download an app to an iOS device unless it is done through the App Store. That's one thing that kind of like people take for granted because they got used to that experience. But in your desktop devices, you guys can install apps that are not part of an app store, both on your Mac and on your PC. But on the iOS devices, so your iPhone and iPad, that's not the case. you want to install an app on them, it needs to go through the App Store.
Yeah.
For one to put an app inside the App Store, one needs to go through their approval process, and your apps need to follow all of the rules and regulations. Which, granted, yes, many of them are great for society and should be in place. We don't want to exploit kids. We don't want to do many, many different things.
None of the bad stuff.
Right? But like in any codex of rules, kind of like in Apple's mind, kind of like they want to protect first and foremost, their interests. Some of them are aligned with us users, but many aren't necessarily. For example, one of the rules of having your app kind of like promoting an app in the App Store is that a monetization that is happening inside the app, as long as it is digital content, needs to utilize Apple's in-app purchase kind of like module. You're forced as an app developer to use them. You're not allowed to charge with, your own payment provider system or something like that. You're forced to use them. And by that also, they are taking their cut. So
it's 30 most of the time though, right?
Yeah, let's call it, but they have pricing tiers, but generally speaking, let's call it 30%. Now, how is this detrimental to crypto, right? So if we want to have a game where we want Matt to trade his digital assets, NFTs, inside the game with other players. So a willing seller meeting a willing buyer of a certain digital asset. So it's an NFT. It's an on-chain transaction, right? Technically, they're not supporting it. Let's call it like that. First thing and foremost, you cannot attach the Apple payment system, which is off-chain, to an on-chain transaction. Technically, they don't provide it to you. And you're not allowed to just use it on-chain with crypto. So say that Matt wants to purchase in-game NFT from me inside the game, and Matt has USDC. So literally we can do it on-chain, right?
Yeah.
That's going to be a violation of the policies because
red flag.
You're utilizing a different payment system, right? Not theirs, despite the fact that they don't support crypto either way. And if you're going to try to do an on-ramp with them, so charge with their fiat, and then you doing in the background an on-chain transaction, that opens up an entire can of worms of issues and problems. And yes, the 30% is there on every piece of the action. So not that I'm saying that Apple shouldn't make money, but it makes kind of like a peer-to-peer transaction to be non-viable in terms of the financials of it.
Yeah.
That's just an easy one off the door, kind of like that basically destroys so much of the experience of the on-chain crypto experience in this matter. And there are many, 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 many other ones. Now, people can play around, and some other games would be trying to do it, and that's awesome. I wish them all the best in this sense. But generally speaking, when you zoom out, Apple has been very, very aggressive in protecting this model.
Of course.
So, for example, many of you are sometimes utilizing your Amazon app to try and purchase a Kindle book. So you search for the book and you want to buy the Kindle book, and you see that it's not available in the app. So kind of like you see it, but it's disabled. You're not allowed to do it. So here is the answer. It's because of Apple's policies. Kindle book, unlike a real world book, it's a digital content. So one cannot use the Amazon app to purchase. You need to use the Apple in-app purchase.
And Amazon
Apple would
doesn't want
30% cut,
30%,
right, on this.
Wild.
So Amazon just blocked it. So the way for one to purchase a Kindle on iOS or iPad is to browse in the browser itself to Amazon, right, and bypass the App Store, right? So, and we're talking about Amazon, right? I don't know. I don't remember. Are they a $1 trillion company or $2 trillion right now? I lost track of their market cap, but kind of like they are adhering to this.
Yeah.
Now, there are a lot of litigation going around that with Apple in Europe, stuff like that, trying to open this up. Apple being Apple, they're fighting this off and putting tons of roadblocks on the customer experience there. And I think that kind of like they're not going to give up so easy about that.
Yeah.
With that in mind, back to us, we wanted to kind of like to have a unique experience of Web3 inside our game. So I'll touch upon for a second about our game, and then I'll go back again to kind of like what we are trying to do. So our game is a Web3 Monopoly type of game. We're starting with Manhattan, where we're taking real-world buildings in Manhattan, turning them into playable NFTs. And there is an entire mobile game there of dice rolling, doing activities and actions such as visiting, raiding, stealing, upgrading your buildings. And there is a lot of trading going on there, right? The buildings, they have a limited amount of supply. The building is a game piece that kind of like earns you the game earnings. So, and they are NFTs. So one wants to trade them. And that's one way of one to making money in the game is figuring out
What
how to
buildings are worth
improve the
more,
building
yeah.
and selling it, right? Or buildings. One can be a landlord as well. And there are other on-chain elements, other coins circulating and stuff like that. We wanted to have a seamless experience, both for Web2 players and Web3 players, that all of them will be meeting in an app-like experience where one won't need to know what is a non-custodial wallet or decentralized exchanges or how an NFT is a thing or token or whatever. One can come and play knowing that buildings are tradable assets. And the magic of the blockchain happens behind the scenes.
It looks and feels like a Web2 game.
Yeah, if you want to be an advanced player and to dig deeper, you're welcome. Everything will be open for you to dig deeper. But on the surface, it's just kind of like a seamless experience.
Yeah.
That's what we wanted to have, and Apple will be preventing this to happen. So when I say Apple, by the way, Google is almost exactly the same. There are certain different caveats, but generally speaking, they are the same. So back to us, it's kind of like we wanted to build a game like this. We wanted to be sure that that's the type of experience, but we have the conundrum of Apple and Google. How the hell are we going to bypass this?
Yeah.
So we took the crazy path of kind of like trying to build the game in a way that can be delivered to mobile, kind of like as a mobile app without running through the App Store. There is a way of doing this. And we're not the first one that kind of like thought about it, but I would say that we're the first one that were crazy enough to actually go do this. So for the last decade, there is a protocol called PWA. That's the acronym. It stands for Progressive Web Apps. And it was pushed very hardly by all of the browser companies more than a decade ago. The idea of it, to keep it simple, and I'm oversimplifying it here, it's basically taking the web technology. It can be HTML5, and if you build it in a certain way and with a certain adhering to the protocol, this website would be able to run kind of like being launched from the device and act and run not like as part of a browser, but instead as a full app experience. So in other words, one would be browsing to our website, say CityVerseTycoon.com, installing our game from there, saving it to home screen. Once one clicks on the icon on the home screen, it will open up not as part of Safari or Chrome or whatever other browser you have. It will be running full screen, just like an app, and it will feel like an app, and it will have access to your local resources similar to an app.
So it's an app without like Apple's sort of stamp of, hey, this is an Apple certified app. Still works, everything's Gucci, it just doesn't have the like, hey, you can get this in the App Store. Same thing.
Bottom line, yes. There were many, many caveats around this before we did it. Is it really the case or not? Bottom line, from our point of view, it is the case. That's how it works. Yeah, we long story short, we are able to provide an app-like experience without going through the App Store. If you need to take something from this call, That's the thing. But going back a year and a half ago, when my co-founder Buzz and myself were presenting it to our team, that's what we want to do. They didn't like it, to say the least. Yeah, it defies all of the ways of one to build a mobile app.
Yeah.
Now, historically speaking, I would say the following. If you would be going back in time 7 years ago and say meet Buzz when he was at Politica and tell him, hey, Buzz, why are you guys paying Apple so much money? Why are you not doing a PWA? I think that you would be probably kicking you off the door because of many different reasons back then. One, life in the App Store was still good. Kind of like, why should they fucking bother with anything else when life is still good here? I'm still cranking money here.
You're still printing.
And life is good.
Yeah.
It's still early. It's still good. Kind of like, so to begin with, motivation is still high because they're paying dozens of millions in fees per year to Apple. But it feels like kind of like, we're happy to do it because we're making so much more and we're getting so much more.
If you're making $1 billion, you have no problem spending 100 mil. And again, apps, and this is one quick thing, I got to throw this in. The most traditional, the most common margin in most businesses is 30%. That's what you're making on your top line. This is not the case in SaaS. This is not the case in mobile gaming or just apps in general. You ship it once. Yes, you have some workarounds. You got to keep it maintained, but like the margins are stupidly high. So that's why so many people say, fuck it, I'll give Apple 30 ticks. I don't care, because they're printing. And that's what Boaz was doing at Playtika. When they're making $1 billion a year on a game, who cares if you're spending 100 or 300 mil, you know?
Yep. As long as you're growing and business is rocking, that's the case. 7 years ago, I would say, still kind of so many questions about performance. Kind of like, okay, Matt, let's say that we'll go with your idea of this PWA shit.
Is it quick?
How about the performance? Kind of like, we have here an app with 3D graphics and shit like that, and it's very performance sensitive, running on the device. You want us to run it on the web. Nah, it's not going to work. The performance is going to be shitty, blah, blah, blah. So that's number 2. Number 3 would be about monetization, which, if you ask me, that's the main reason. The huge benefit that you gain from Apple and Google is the fact that kind of like they allow for this spontaneous purchase that is so important for games.
Yeah.
We just tap and that's it, and not kind of like, hey, insert your credit card here or some shit like that. So I think that was the case. Kind of like there wasn't a necessity so big 7 years ago, but time went by. The App Store is terrible in terms of distribution right now in the recent years.
Yeah.
It's a red ocean. Comes Web3, and we want to have a Web3, and they are totally not permissible for that. So necessity is the mother of all invention. So we started kind of like playing around with that, and things change. Kind of like the devices are so powerful these days that it's nothing. They can run everything on the browser. So we checked it. I actually found out a game that was compiled to run as a PWA, a game that was existing in the App Store, and I gave my team kind of like these two ones. They were running side by side. Told them, you need to spot which one is the PWA and which one is the native app. They couldn't make it. They couldn't spot it. Told them, okay. Quick. So the performance question is irrelevant, right? Second thing was about the monetization. Again, so many new offerings of payment providers for real-world applications and web applications, including the Apple Pay and Google Pay that went out of the app stores and they are out there in the world. All of them you can utilize them inside a PWA or a website. So that's awesome. You can provide an experience that is like inside the App Store. And then we were left with a big question, actually, that nobody had before. Can you actually market a PWA? Can you convince people to install PWA? After 16 years of consumer, call it education, of how you install a mobile app, can you actually kind of like make people install a PWA? Despite the fact that it's easy, it's like 2 taps, just the fact that it's different is a question mark.
People hate friction.
Yeah, so that's what we went to do first. literally kind of like a year ago, we started running ads on Facebook and Instagram promoting our game, Monopoly, but for real, or something like that, kind of like on this matter. So not being promoted as a Web3 game and not as an ordinary Web2 game. And the traffic was, we were leading it to a shell of the game, let's call it like that, in the form of a PWA, where we just wanted to answer the question, can we make people install?
Will people install
and
this?
That's how we started. Kind of like we kind of like the assumptions of people around us were no fucking way that this is going to work. Nobody's going to install it. And the earlier results were good. They were good before any optimization. So we started running and optimizing more and improving and started building the game like this while driving traffic. And then we saw that kind of like the conversion rates are on par or better than a mobile native app. CPIs, which is cost per install, let's call it like that, is on par or cheaper than the alternative mobile app.
Yep.
Then we went on okay, let's see the retention, right? Retention was as good as a mobile app. Then we said, hey, let's see how it monetizes. Kind of like, can we monetize? And monetization numbers were on par. And that's where we were convinced, okay, we have a way. Let's start building all of the Web3 elements into the game. And that was exactly 6 months ago. And we are about to launch the game in a couple of weeks.
Firstly, I love that story. I will play devil's advocate for 1 second. I do think that PWAs definitely have a place, but I do believe that you guys are a bit of an anomaly and very unique because of the offering that you have. You took something like Monopoly, which is one of the most famous games, if not the most famous game of all time, tied it in with Zillow property, real world assets. Like New York City is probably the most famous city in the world. People know what a lot of buildings look like. People can now own these buildings. They can become renters, then homeowners, then landlords. Like it's a dream that a lot of people have that will never be able to really, like, am I going to ever own a massive building in New York City? Probably not. But heck, I could own it in CityVerse Tycoon. And then when someone lands on it and rolls the dice, I can get yield. That's cool shit right there. It's fun. And I have an opportunity to make some cake. Like, you know what I mean? So again, I'm not putting you or the team down in any capacity. I'm just saying, I don't think that PWAs, I guess what I'm getting at is without an incredible offer, I do think there'd be a lot more friction with PWAs than sort of you guys encountered. You know what I mean?
I know, but I have counters to that. One, we've seen in Web3 already some other PWAs, FrankTech.
Yeah, that's
was
the
like
best
that.
Example. Yeah. Solid offering too, though.
Well, let's say the following. If you don't have a solid offering, nothing will help you.
Yeah,
but,
you're hooked either way. Yeah, that's true.
But based on my experience, I'm telling you, I can promote anything as a PWA. It's surprising. We have more than 100,000 installs of the PWA already. So it's funny to see kind of like the reactions of people. One, everybody's treating it as an app. So regular Joe or Jane, they don't know how to distinguish a PWA or an app. So they
that's true.
They reach out to us and say the app, they kind of like they treat it as an app by all means. I think that kind of like that anything can be promoted like that and we'll be able to make people install it.
Love it.
Obviously, as long as it's solid, right? Kind of like if you have,
of course.
If you're selling dog shit, then okay.
Good offering and it will work. Tom, we got to take a quick break. Give a huge shout out to our sponsor of the show, Prime XPT. And when we get back, we're going to jump in a little bit deeper to CityVerse Tycoon, talk a little bit about the game and some upcoming launches. Until then, huge shout out to Prime XPT, longtime friends of CryptoNews.com and longtime sponsors of the Crypto News podcast. Prime XPT offers a robust trading system for both beginners and professional traders. It doesn't matter if you're a rookie or a vet, you can easily design and customize your layouts and widgets to best fit your trading style. Prime XPT is also running an exclusive promo for listeners of the Crypto News pod. Use the promo code CryptoNews50 to take advantage of this offer and receive 50% of your deposit credited to your trading account. Again, that is CryptoNews50, all one word, to receive 50% of your deposit credited to your trading account. And now back to the show with Tomer. Let's jump right back into the game here. Obviously, some really cool launches coming up, but I sort of gave people a little, explainer of what the game is. And again, guys, go check out the website. But incredible graphics. It is literally a mix between Monopoly Go and like Zillow. You scroll a beautiful map of New York City. You find really cool buildings that you like. You go snag that building, and then if you land on that building and you don't own it, you rent. Then you're a homeowner. Then you're a landlord. You get yield from people landing on your buildings. Tons of really cool, fun mini games and shit to do within the app. P2P marketplace. Blah blah blah. I'm sure I'm missing some stuff, but after I sort of set the table there, I'll let you finish it off.
No, you're touching upon all of the pointers there. Yeah, it is a game that has many games within the game, depending on kind of like your goals and objectives. You can be a renter, which means you're playing for free the game. You don't need to purchase a building in order to start playing it. Yep. You're playing with a building that is owned by someone else. Obviously, you can and should, from our point of view, purchase buildings and play and utilize them. Down the road, you can become a landlord, hence your buildings will be utilized by others. And there are inside tons of mini games, kind of like your goal is to upgrade your portfolio, purchasing to your buildings and upgrades and maintaining them. Buildings get deteriorated in their state by raids conducted by other players. Tons of mini loops happening inside the game. Like always, it's kind of like better shown than described. It's like describing the taste of ice cream. It's better tasted, right? Kind of like hard to kind of like just, but it's fun, cool, engaging game.
And you guys have been building for 2 years. This isn't like, hey, we started 3 months ago. This is 2 years in work.
I wish that we would be starting 3 months ago, but nah, it is a heavy lift. In an hindsight, probably we could cut it by half, but that's in an hindsight. I wasn't
Story for another day.
Yeah.
I love it. Walk us through some launches. You guys got a lot of really cool stuff popping off in the next couple of weeks, months, so on and so forth. And this episode's going to air on Thursday, May 16th. And with that in mind, what kind of nuggets can you give us today, Tom?
Yeah, besides the Denver Nuggets, beating Minnesota with Jokic. Yeah, so let's talk about it. For some of the listeners that will kind of like browse our website right now, CityVerseTycoon.com, they will see there what we call the pre-launch version that is being out there for, I would say, a year. Obviously, tons of stuff has been added to this. But that would be the Web 2-ish version of our game. It was done mainly to gather information, kind of like activities and understanding of our game from the audience, being sure that kind of like we can promote the PWA and many, many other things like that. The version that we are about to launch in the next few weeks will basically have all of the Web3 elements baked into the game.
Gotcha.
So I don't have an exact date now because that's going to be a surprise, but we are talking about somewhere in June. That's when the launch will happen. The best way to stay on top of it is joining our Discord.
Yeah.
So the best way of doing this is you can go to CityVerseTycoon.com. You have the socials kind of like plugged in the top right corner of the website. You can go to our Twitter page, follow us there, and then go to Discord. These are the way that you can stay on top of exactly the right dates and get the earliest alpha ever. Having said that, that's a big thing that's going to happen this launch. The main things that will be available in this launch are, one, finally the ability of purchasing and selling buildings.
Yeah.
These buildings are NFTs. Different, just like in real life, different buildings, they have different game powers and perceived value by the players. So that's a big thing. The other one is the introduction of an additional coin in the game. This coin has a utility that will be revealed later on. Obviously, all of the seamless of onboarding people, kind of like every user basically gets a non-custodial embedded wallet. The buildings can be purchased using fiat crypto. The seller is being paid with crypto though. So if you're an owner of a building and you list it for sale in the in-game marketplace and someone went on to purchase it from you, say you wanted to sell it for $100, so the buyer would be able to purchase it either with fiat. In this case, you will be paid with USDC. as the seller, or you will be able to purchase it with crypto, and still you will be paid with USDC as the seller.
Gotcha. Can you give us any alpha or a little sneak peek on perhaps what chain you guys are building, launching on?
No,
gotta wait for that. Okay, fair enough.
In a couple of weeks, we are announcing this as well.
I tried.
You tried. The next thing is we are minting. There is a collection that we are about to mint in the upcoming weeks. Again, you can kind of like join our Twitter to see the exact date. We're partnering with Stereo to mint it. This is an alpha. It's the utility of this mint, right? So the collection is called the Piggy Club.
Yeah.
We have inside the game what we call the piggy bank, which is very traditional to have in games, especially in mobile games. The piggy bank is where you're accruing game value.
Yeah.
So every time that you do an upgrade to your buildings or buildings, some rewards are being accrued inside that piggy bank.
Gotcha.
The rewards can vary from different on-chain and off-chain elements. They can be coupons for additional buildings, it can be additional dice rolls in the game, and an additional coin that we have in the game that has a utility. These piggy banks by themselves, by the way, they will be on-chain, but that's down the road. Back again to us, the NFT collection that we're minting is called the Piggy Club. And the Piggy Club main utility is the fact that it boosts your in-game earnings. It acts like a multiplier to the amount of rewards that you accumulate to your piggy bank.
Nice.
Right? So if you own 5 buildings, each building have a different multiplier depending on the game value of the building.
Yep.
If you own one of the piggy clubs, all of your multipliers will be getting a boost. The traits of the piggy club are how much is the boost and for how many buildings you can apply it.
Gotcha.
Right? Cool. So maybe you have an ultra rare one that has a major boost and can be applied for 50 buildings. While I have a more common one that has a boost that is less powerful than yours, significantly less powerful than yours, and can be applied only to 5 buildings.
Makes total sense.
So this mint is really happening really soon. If you join our Discord and follow us on Twitter, you have a chance maybe of getting a whitelist spot before the mint. And that's where you can get more data about pricing, alpha around that, and more nuggets. But what I just said right now, you guys are the first ones hearing it ever about the utility of the Piggy Club collection. It's a small collection as well. Not many units. Kind of like we're not talking about 10,000 or 5,000 units. We're talking about less than this.
Amazing. Tomer, what a treat. Great to have you on. We barely scratched the surface. We'll have to have you on for round 2 once you guys are absolutely up and running. But really, really appreciate you coming on as always. Before you go, can you please let our listeners know where they can find you personally and, of course, CityVerse Tycoon online and on socials?
Yeah, so CityVerse Tycoon, the best place to start digging is cityversetycoon.com. You can search for us on Google or and get to our website, and through the website get to our Twitter page and Discord. Or you can start by searching for us on Twitter, search for CityVerse Tycoon. Probably you'll get us showing up there. Same in regards to myself. You can search for me on Twitter, Tomer Pascal. You'll find me there, or on LinkedIn, or from our website as well. We have a section of kind of like of our bios, and you can find me through there and reach out to me or to any other team member that you wish to speak with through there.
Amazing. Tomer, thanks for coming on, my friend. Always a pleasure. We will keep in touch and can't wait to have you on for round 2.
Thank you so much for having me.
Folks, what an episode with Tomer Pascal, CEO and co-founder of OwnPlay, the parent company of CityVerse Tycoon, the mobile game that is about to pop off. Do go check them out at cityversetycoon.com. If you guys enjoyed this one, I hope you did. Please do subscribe. It would mean the world to my team and I. Speaking of the team, love you guys. Thank you so much for everything. Eustace, you're the man. Appreciate you as always. And back to the listeners, love you guys. Keep on growing those bags and keep on staying healthy, wealthy, and happy. Bye for now, and we'll talk soon.